This podcast has topics in relation to death, suicide and drug use. This may be confronting for some listeners.
As veterans and first responders, we also use some dark humour in this episode. We ask that you keep in mind that dark humour is a timeless and research-supported method.
I just wanted to use that for dark humour.
I was like...
I know, you were killing it. You were killing it. Hang on.
We have intro music.
I really don't think anyone else likes this tune as much as we do. You into it, Karis?
Sorry?
You into this tune or not?
Oh, it's amazing, yeah.
He was humming it when we were setting up.
I know you can't see people's faces on this. That was the most sarcastic face I've seen.
So we're back again.
Is that light supposed to be red or green?
The red one's supposed to be red.
You saw it in the fake one last time when I started recording without recording.
And the timer is counting.
Yeah, we're good to go. And our format of this card, absolutely nothing can go wrong with this podcast now.
Thank you for jinxing this episode. So we have our first repeat guest back.
Which is funny because he's actually still our first guest.
Yeah.
So
we're
our first return and still our first guest.
But welcome back, Dan Caruana. Thank you to the Imposter podcast.
I'm a rookie. Hang on a minute. It's even written on my screen. Hey, welcome, Karis.
So we had a good chat the first time around. It's been a couple of weeks and we've got you back to continue on with the second half. But the first thing I just wanted to ask was that we had a conversation about the first one where after you were invited on, you actually got a bit of imposter syndrome coming onto the Imposter podcast. So you've listened to the first episode and some of your friends and family have had a listen as well. So how do you feel about episode 1 and coming back on?
Better now. When we first finished it, I said to you, I think, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. But a couple of family listened to it and they give me the green light, I guess, to say it was okay. And happy to be back and let's get into it.
Excellent. All right. Well, we left off, we've been talking about, we've been through your competition history with Taekwondo, touched on first little career as a myotherapist and then your entry into Victoria Police, your time at the Sunshine Police Station, and then had just touched on your application for the Critical Incident Response Team, and you had just started the course, the CERT course there. So we talked a little bit about...
CERT being?
I said Critical Incident Response Team.
I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy looking at my screen.
I probably said CERT the second time around, but I'd already qualified it with the full name. So we were diving a little bit into what was then the first Friday and a bit of a PT sort of bonding session. So... if you want to pick up there and just, go back to that sort of how you felt, whether there was any imposter feelings through that first week and then continuing on into the course.
We can take you back.
I reckon that whole course is an imposter feeling. There's if you get comfortable, I guess, in a course like that, then you're probably not doing it right or you're not as attentive as you need to be. I guess that first Friday, once that's done, because that's, a big sort of milestone or just everybody knows about it, you are bonded, I guess, more so with the rest of your course mates. But
that's basically just an extended PT session and team building session while we're talking about it in that reference.
Yeah, I guess that's the point of it is a team building thing and it works. And then after that, it's just, I think I sort of said, last one, it's day by day, scenario by scenario until you're either kicked off or you get through. Like it's never really comfortable in the course. Probably imposter the whole time. Even after you get through, if you get through, I still feel like you're probably not comfortable at the unit. Not to say you're not welcomed or anything, but until I think I've said to you off air, like until you've not proving yourself, but maybe within yourself validated that you should be there by, I guess, having a successful job, if that makes sense, not necessarily using force or deploying options or anything, but just making good decisions at a job, I guess, to make your teammates feel comfortable that you're capable is the biggest.
So you start out without any credibility, really. You've done a basic course, but you're saying you've got to tick off a few jobs to feel validated with that training?
I felt that way, definitely. And yeah, what you said is a good way to put it, I think. Credibility. You've done your training and that's all well and good, but you sort of want to put it in an operational setting to know that you can apply it under pressure, I guess. And I guess that imposter feeling stays until you probably have had a couple of successful jobs, and you feel like, this is just my interpretation, you feel like the team is comfortable that you will be able to do the job around them safely and have their back, I guess, of lack of better terms. That probably happened for me. I got to the unit maybe July or August, I think, 2014, and I think the first big one happened maybe February of the next year, and it was in Safety Beach, and a guy had just been accused of sexually assaulting his stepdaughter or something like that, and he was ready. He had some firearms at home, and he was basically waiting for that day to happen, and he wanted to suicide. We got there, it was a search job because they'd seen him running around the front of the house with a rifle, or with what they thought was a rifle. And we get there, it gets dark. We're there for hours and hours because the negotiators are there with him trying to obviously negotiate him out. His whole thing was he wanted us to go in there and witness him suicide by whatever firearm he had. Obviously, we're not going to do that. So we're sitting there for hours while the negotiation's happening. We're probably offset from his house 4 or 5 houses up. If you're looking at the house, we're off to the right across the road, probably 4 or 5 houses up. This is before CERT had armoured vehicles or anything like that, so we were just running ballistic shields, and I guess that's why they didn't want to get too close. Anyway, it gets dark. I had the old monocle night vision, the one that we had.
So, was it on a mount, or were you holding that with your hand?
Holding it with my hand. That's yeah. But before we had the mount,
and the other hand had the 1.5 by 1.5 ballistic shield.
No, I didn't have the
covers
shield.
The one thing that you have.
Thank goodness. He ended up coming out of the house, walking towards us down the street. He was trying to walk towards where the command post was, where his family was, in AV, and he was going to commit suicide there.
AV being
Ambulance Victoria. Yep. Obviously, we couldn't let that happen in front of them, at least. So as he pops out, I was looking through the night vision. I saw a guy come out with something in his hand, looked like a rifle. Starts walking towards us. He presents. He shoots. Whether he was shooting at us or shooting at himself. One of the other guys at CERT shot back. Anyway, I ended up walking up. He was still swinging the firearm in his hand. Dog grabbed him, as in K9, grabbed him on the leg. He's sort of still swinging this firearm around, so I ended up just tasering, which was successful. That's what made him drop the gun, and then job was resolved. I think I've said to you before about auditory exclusion. That was that job. Whereas the guy who fired next to me, I had no idea had shot at all.
Obviously, a gunshot is exceptionally loud.
Yeah,
but you had no recollection of hearing the shot.
No. I heard shots going off, but I thought it was this guy letting shots off. I had no idea it was the guy that was right next to me shooting. Until the job was we're doing first aid on this guy who'd shot himself, and he had a chest wound that was flowing pretty well. But and then the boss came up to me and said, "Did you shoot as well?" And I'm like, "What do you mean as well?" Like I thought it was just him that was shooting, and he's like, "No, did you discharge a firearm?" I'm like, "No, not at all." Anyway, dealt with that. Anyway, after that job, it was it was all well and good, but at the end of it, I guess I got some validation from the crew, or more so the sergeants, that were like, "Good job." Essentially the taser that I hit him with made him drop the weapon, so that was resolved. I wasn't told to do it or anything. It was just part of the training that we do on the course, exactly as we do an arrest team, lethal, not less lethal, that sort of stuff. And it worked, and then that was sort of gave me the moment of like, all right, I can, under pressure, probably pretty high pressure with firearm job, I can do what I was trained to do. So that sort of led me to sort of feel like I was fitting into the team at that time. That was probably the moment where I didn't let the imposter stuff go, because I feel like I've always got it. Everybody probably always has it. But that was, for being at that unit, that was probably the first, or the job that made me go, all right, I can be a part of this team here and operate somewhat successfully, I guess.
So you sort of said that was maybe 6 months into being at CERT. And just for the listeners, I mean, there would have been lots of little jobs on the way to that being what you've said was kind of the first significant job.
Yeah, a lot of little jobs. First job at CERT, we cordoned an empty house. You know, it's not unusual. This was a gun job as well. God, a shotgun or something. But yeah, but you don't get to make. At that time, I was just in a cordon position. There was no decisions to be made. It was
just cordon being surrounding a house.
Yes. Yeah.
Just for people at home.
Yeah. I was just in a position, just maintaining a position, and nothing essentially happened. I didn't have to make any decisions, or it was no resolution, I guess. So, yeah, there's plenty of those sort of jobs that led up to it. And, you get your little ad hoc tasks here and there, but this was probably my first big siege, firearm involved, I guess, danger, what felt like there was danger.
Oh, certainly. And so you've completed a job like that as well as a lot of little ones leading up to it. At that point, did you feel established in the team with some credibility, or was there still a lot to go?
Still a lot to go. Never established. I was only 6 months in. That's nothing, really. A lot of guys were at the unit for years. But it just felt like there was maybe some trust, I guess, with the other teammates that you could do the job. But that's it. You never really feel, I've made it, obviously. But, that moment was just, again, because the sergeant sort of pulled me aside and said, good job, all that sort of stuff. It made me feel, all right, okay, I've done what I needed to do at that job. I did the team thing, and that's all you need to do, really. But that was the first time, and probably the imposter stuff sort of backed off a little bit there. But obviously, it doesn't take long to kick off again. But and then just run the cert floor for 14 months or something after that, just continually doing those sort of jobs.
So it's very similar to what we talked about last time as well. You got to Sunshine, you had these big couple of jobs in the first day, and then you go on and, you integrate to that station. So really what we've been identifying with the imposter stuff is that it just levels up each time that you take on a new role. Is that what you felt through this sort of Victoria Police journey? Yeah,
I haven't really thought about it like that, but that's a good way to put it, I think. Yeah, it definitely, you need a level, it levels up exactly there. Yeah, like I said, the feeling never goes away, I guess. But, to keep validating yourself, I guess that's probably the wrong way to put it, but it's the only word I've got in my head at the moment to articulate. But, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yep. So where does that lead to? A couple of years at CERT, and then what was your next level up?
I think I did 14 months just on the CERT floor, which is just responding to triple O calls where general duties, police can't deal with it or resolve it with the resources they have. So CERT go and assist with some specialist resources, I guess. And then from there, after that 14 months, I applied for tasked operations, or we affectionately call it TOPS, where it's just a smaller team of 2 sergeants and 12 ORs, I think, other ranks for those listening. And we just did more planned responses. So a detective unit might have an arrest or a warrant they need to execute, but it's too high risk for them. They haven't got the training to do it again, or the resources, or it might be just something out of their scope. It might be a barricaded house that they know of and they don't have the ability to get in. So then they'd send an application through to tasked operations. The bosses would look at it, assess the risk, and then if it's okayed, then it'd be sent down to the team to plan and execute. I did that for 2 years. That was probably a highlight of my career. Oh, it definitely is a highlight of my career across jobs. Those 2 years were the best, I think. We had an amazing crew that you were part of, Al. Were a part of. I can't fault that at all. It was a good time.
And, what makes you say that? What are the things that contributed to that being a highlight?
The different jobs that we got to do that was planned, so it was all down to us. So like those other jobs that you do on the cert floor happen on the fly, and you just turn up and deal with what you're presented with, which is, a completely different challenge on its own. But the tasked operations one, the job comes to you and you manufacture how it's going to be executed. So you do, online planning, you do recce's of the reconnaissance of the place, then you plan who's going to do what role within the job, and then you need to execute the job, and then there's post-operational stuff that you need to complete. And I just like the whole end-to-end side of that. And then obviously the guys we worked with, we all got along very, very well. We had good team, and we'd rehearse together, we'd train together, we'd have a laugh together, we'd eat together. Like we were just a really tight knit unit by the end.
Yeah, another thing you've told me before, so as you said, that was a small team that worked intensely together. So using a lot of the same tactics and stuff all the time. And I remember you telling me about, so with techniques-wise, back in those days, you would call all the doors and what your intentions were as you moved through a house. And you'd said at one stage, like, oh, do you realise that nobody calls doors anymore? And nobody sort of did recall that. And do you remember why you were recounting that and what the feeling was like?
Yeah, so not to go into tactics or anything, but yeah, initially we'd be very loud, I guess, in announcing ourselves, and then which is what you should be doing. But then throughout the house, we'd be quite loud normally as well, just so everybody knew what everybody else was doing. But that stopped. I guess tactics changed as well as to why that stopped, but I think it was a lot of the fact that because we worked together so long, and like I said, we rehearsed together and trained together, and that we knew each other very well in how we would move. So, for an example, move through a house. So it just became a lot smoother, I guess, and the I would say the communication, because we were still communicating, but the way we went about it was a lot different, a lot quieter, a lot smoother. We just I just felt like we knew each other very well, and in how we would operate in the job. We all, not all, but certain people would have certain roles within the team, and we just continually do those roles. So we got pretty good at it. Well, I thought we did, and then we just moved well together.
And like psychologically, I always think of that. They talk about flow state and things like that. Do you remember feeling things like that where you were just in tune with what was happening and you could kind of sense what other people were going to do through the house, or how did you see it?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Yeah, I guess I don't use the word flow state, but that's a good way to put it. You just get used to the person in front of you, reading their body language, or just even looking at their expression in their face, whatever, which way they're going to move, so then you don't need to do those big overt communication stuff necessarily. So yeah, it becomes a bit more synergistic, I guess, is the word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you talked about auditory exclusion earlier. Did you experience any other physiological stuff when you're doing that sort of planned work?
I guess, yeah, I think the first TOPS warrant that we executed, I definitely know my heart rate was through the roof. And as you get more experience doing the jobs, I felt that you became much more calm, much more relaxed. You got to see, your vision opened up a lot more, and you got to see a lot more of what's happening around you, what your teammates are doing, what's happening next door, what's happening, in the level above, rather than just so focused on what your task is. But that's probably the biggest one. You just, with experience comes, I guess, you're just a bit more relaxed, not complacent. That's not what I'm saying, but yeah, you're just not as ramped. You're not as wired. Yeah.
So at the end of 2 years there, had the imposter gone away, or did you feel, validated? Were you in your right place by the end of that?
Definitely felt I was in my right place, but I don't think the imposter goes away. Every job, I think we've spoken about this before as well, you want to be, on point, not necessarily for yourself, but for everybody else, for the guys around you. So again, I think if that imposter stuff goes away, you might become complacent, and then that's going to become an issue. So no, I don't think the imposter goes away, but you definitely feel more comfortable in the position that you're in. That's for sure. Yeah.
I've thought about too, a lot of people probably think there's this fear and trepidation, but it's often not of the crook or the job you've got to do. I always thought of it like it's at, letting your teammates down or failing on your tasks. Did you have any views on that those feelings in doing those jobs?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. We had so much planning on these jobs that sometimes we knew the layout of the place. We knew everybody's supposed to be in the house, their history, vehicles, all that sort of stuff. So it was never really a fear of what's going to happen inside the house, or whatever the arrest was, not necessarily the house. But yeah, it's always, I wouldn't even call it anxiety, but conscious of, like you said, letting down your teammates. Again, it's coming back to that trust thing where you want them to trust that you'll do the job that you need to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting frame because really the first part of what you said is that you absolutely have the credibility and confidence to be there doing it, yet you're still always going to be worried about failing at your task or letting your teammates down, even though it's not happened. But yeah, it's an interesting frame.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're ever going to be satisfied in your skills in anything that you do, whether it's policing or say we talk about jiu-jitsu. Like I'm never going to be.
Might be.
Well,
some might.
Maybe. But yeah, definitely never rest on your laurels, I guess. So you always want to be better because you know everybody else is pushing to be better too. So you don't want to be left behind. That's my feel anyway.
It was always, you talk about when you're going through a house and you're doing clearances and that sort of stuff. It was like you don't want to jam the hallway. You don't want to get in somebody's way. You like if you don't open a door properly or you get the hinges wrong and you go in the wrong way, like just little rookie moves like that realistically everybody else is that focused on their own job that they're probably not going to pick that up. But I think that's sort of a sign of when you're trying to be a professional is you give yourself far more. Yeah, you give yourself a kick in the butt so much more for you doing stuff because you think you've let the team down when half the time they're focusing on their own thing. And I think that is a lot of the time it transfers over to everything in life where nobody else is paying more attention to you than you are yourself, and you make things a lot harder than they need to be. And I think that's where the imposter thing really, really steps in where excuse me, like nobody else knows what you're thinking in your head and no one else is paying as much attention to you as you are when you're doing something. And I find that when you sort of realize that and you give yourself a bit of a break, and a lot of that's when you become conscious competence and all that sort of stuff. But like when you give yourself a break, you find that you perform a lot better. Like where you're saying you're not getting complacent, but you're like, I'm all over doors now. I'm all over where I need to go next. I do this and that. So now that's not taking up as much mindset as you are of being aware of what's going to come when you open that door. I remember jumping into one door and me and one of the other boys, we kicked this door in thinking, yep, old mate's going to be in here. He had like one of those Chinese imitation Uzis somewhere in his house. We kicked this door in and there was 2 kids in a cot. And like our foot hasn't even hit the ground and we've gone from obviously get on the ground, don't move, roll, that sort of stuff to seeing these 2 kids like, hey mate, how you going? And meanwhile, everyone else is kicking the crap out of the house. The dad's run out the back. He's tried to run through a glass door and all this sort of stuff. And then me and this other bloke are sitting there playing with little Batman toys. It was such a surreal thing. But like when you have the space to actually be able to do that, whereas had I just come off course, I would have kicked in there and just frozen and gone, what do I do with kids? I've literally just run into a house and pointing guns at them.
100%. That's sort of two points there, twofold, I reckon. The first point that you said, nobody else is focused on the stuff that you're doing, so you're always kicking yourself for the small stuff. And that's the imposter thing. Yeah, I 100% agree. But I also think if you're not doing that and nobody's doing that, thinking about the small stuff, then it goes to shit. It's not professional. It doesn't look good. Well, it doesn't work well.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That's where professionalism comes into it. Because there's some people who don't have imposter syndrome at all from birth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we've met those guys. We're like, I'm actually the best at this. And you're like, mate, no.
They're living their best life though.
Yeah, they are. At no point
they're the really
ever
happy
upset.
ones.
Yeah.
But well, I found, at least with the tops guys, we all had that strive we all got pissed off at ourselves for making those little mistakes, which is why I think we gelled so well together and is why we rehearsed and stuff, because we all did make those little mistakes, but we all hated making those little mistakes. So then when we fixed it, the bigger picture became better. And that's the second point, I think, of what you're saying is when you do, like you said, not become more complacent, but more comfortable in your role, those bigger gross movements or those gross things that you're so worried about are not an issue. But then you start focusing on the smaller stuff, and you can go from kicking in the door and being aggressive to trying to find the crook to, if you do come into a room with a child, you can switch pretty quickly. So I think that is a result of focusing on the little stuff beforehand, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. And the smaller stuff that is annoying you, the better you are, I think. Because we've had jobs where people come in and you're like, where's your magazine, mate? Like they're clearing a house and there's no mag.
Yeah, like that's the gross stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But that's where it starts on the course.
Yeah.
And then, the more you go through, the more you can do it. And then it goes to changing shoulders when you're coming in, which I think they've gone away from that now. But it was really like, If people did it, you're like, the old mate's got no issues
Yeah.
doing stuff if he's bothering to change his shoulder, going through, etc.
Yeah, this is like, we're talking very specific niche police stuff right now, but it applies to everything. Like if I'm talking jiu-jitsu or even going back to the days when I was a kid doing Taekwondo, it's the same thing. Like it's the little things that you have to try and improve. Like if you wanted to be a world champion, say, everybody's good at the basic stuff. It's that little 1% of stuff that's going to make you the world champion. Not that I would know because I never got there. But that's...
You went far off though.
Yeah, well,
You were sharked by a Canadian roommate.
yeah.
But he was
Stitched you
next
up.
level though. He was in your head before you'd even got to the part.
Prick. But yeah, that's the nuts and guts of it, I guess. That's...
Nailed it.
Yeah. That's all I got.
So from there, you took all that experience and competence into a training role.
Confidence. Yeah,
Well, it sounds like some humility as well.
Which is funny because that's not what your office was known for the 2 years you were there.
whatever.
But it's funny, and
in-house banter.
and you scoff at it, but all the things you've just talked about, the debriefing and everyone admitting to all those little 1%ers, it speaks to a good sort of humble culture, which is where things can always adapt and improve. And although you might laugh when I say, and then you're chosen to go into a training role, I think that's pretty legitimate. You had that credibility and that experience. So what was the transition to training like?
Yeah, definitely had the experience. We had a lot of experience in those 2 years, definitely. Transition was good. I'd done some of the courses to go into the training wing beforehand, so like instructor courses, which sort of led nicely into my application into the training wing. Also, I was injured for a small time while in task operations. So while I was injured on light duties, I went out with the training wing guys that were running a course. So I sort of got to be an instructor without being an instructor. I got to sit back and see how they ran it, which is really handy. And then when I got to the training wing, I didn't run myself. I was part of the instructor group that ran a couple of cert intakes and then the continuation training for the other guys that were still in the office, obviously, that just needed to upkeep their skills. And I did that for 12 months maybe until everything changed.
Everything changed. Anyway, then you saw the light, which was FRV, aka Fire Rescue Victoria. Is that what it stands for?
Yep.
Yeah.
MFB when I joined.
Oh.
Metropolitan Fire Brigade, but then it all got patched over about 18 months into Fire Rescue Victoria.
Patched over is an
But
interesting term.
both sides are all the same, aren't they? Same job?
Not going there. Yeah, same job.
Yeah.
We won't push the politics on that just yet.
I don't even know the politics in that.
So like a lot of very wise police officers, you made the jump to the firefighters.
Yep.
And so you've established a pretty accomplished career in one element. And so what happened?
These fingers hovering over the buttons.
I'm just like, I can see all the ones, what the
There's
different
something
sounds are. I was like, damn it, I missed one.
So was it back to square one? Did you take a lot of confidence and experience into MFB, or how did that all play out? And what's the first step?
I left VicPol in 2019, but before that,
Too soon?
Before that, obviously, you have to apply to MFB or FRV now. So same things as what I was talking about before. I think there's 13 steps to get into Fire Rescue Victoria, as in, start off with an exam, a written exam with all, your maths, mechanical reasoning, that sort of stuff, spatial reasoning. And then just every stage. So same thing as what I said before. I took every step one at a time, didn't know where it was going to go or whether I was going to be successful. But to be honest, at the end of the written exam, it was really hard. It was so hard. I hadn't... Is this X-Files?
It says scary.
Oh.
That didn't hit scary like I thought it was going to.
I actually called my partner and just said, I'm staying in VicPol. There was no way I'll pass that exam. Don't worry about it. And she's probably like, you've been...
I gave it a run.
Yeah, she's like, you're just being humble. I'm sure you did really well. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. When you walk out of those sort of exams, there was like thousands of people there, right? Thousands. you walk out and everybody's sort of, even if you don't know each other, you're like, oh, how did you go with that question? We struggled with this question. It was fucking silence. Nobody talked. Everybody just had their head down and walked to their cars.
What is a semicolon and why do I care?
Yeah. It was like they had a whole paragraph or 2-3 paragraphs on philosophy, and you had to interpret what the philosopher was trying to say. And I'm like, that's the point of philosophy, mate. It could be interpreted in 3 ways. Like,
that was probably the right answer.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Anyway. I scraped through. I just passed. And got through the next stages. And then
they've just get so many applicants, they just have to get rid of some with weird testing, or
oh, mate, I don't.
It's just part of the way they do their rounds.
It was ridiculously hard. They said I had a 5-minute warning, and I still had about 10 or 15 questions to go. So I just
is it one of those ones where they're not expecting you to finish them though?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, this is an example. The mechanical reasoning one, it was the cogs and wheels and pulleys thing that they show. So there's a big diagram there, and I'm looking at it and working it all out. I'm like, okay, that moves this way, that moves this way. And then I failed to read the question straight away. So I was figuring out the diagram, and then they go,
what is your name?
No, then it was like, so if this diagram was reversed, which way would cog A go? And I'm like, why would you do that? Anyway, so got through and then got through the physical and the psych and now the interviews, and then started FRV recruits or MFB recruits.
So it's such an interesting process because they get so many more applicants than any other organisation. So again,
you've got PC. You're like, than any other organisation. How many do they get AV?
Well,
do they get a bunch of AV?
No, so they
they've got to graduate university, so there's only a set amount each year. It's still very hard to get into.
It's completely different. They do the uni degree and then they have to apply for spots.
Right.
So
I think a lot go interstate or overseas and then have to come back to Ambulance Victoria.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Another very challenging route. But
right, so 2 out of 3 are really hard to get into.
What's the other one?
I don't know. Just a random thought process I was going through.
So then you get to is it a college? I think you've called it?
They call it a college, yep. I think actually they've changed it again now, training facility or something, but yeah.
So you start with a crew there that have been whittled down from a very large number and have some sort of idea about what philosophy is. And then what happens from there?
Different to policing academy, the first 3 days they take you on this little retreat, which at first I thought this is a wank fest. But
a stitch up?
Yeah. I thought we're just going to get smashed for 3 days. But no, it was just to get to know you, really, even get to know your personality, like introvert, extrovert. They do their Myers-Briggs test and all that sort of stuff. A couple of days in, I'm like, all right, this might have some merit, because what I did like about it is then the next week, when you go to actually start your recruits, you're in full uniform and everything, you don't have that initial phase of getting to know everybody while you're sitting in the classroom, if that makes sense. So you're not distracted by that sort of crap. You're just focused on the learning. So I think it actually has good merit, because everybody had built a bond. It was almost like, you cert smash day without that, but you're building that bond. So when you start the recruits, you're already, familiar with each other. So it was good. It was all right. And then it's a similar time frame, I guess, the recruits to the police recruits. I don't know, 5 months or something similar. And they just step you through, obviously, as you'd expect a training course to be. Start your basic, and then they build you and build you and build you until you have all the skills. All the skills that you need to be a basic, just a firefighter on the back of a truck, to start your shift. Yeah.
Is that compared to some of the other training you've done? Is there any yelling or discipline in that, or is it a very different approach that they take at the college there?
Very different. There's no yelling. There's disappointed dad sort of stuff if you stuff up a drill, but there's no real yelling. Other people might have different experiences, because it all depends on your recruit instructors, I guess. But no, my recruit instructors are really good. And they just step you through. You make a mistake, you redo it, do it the next time. That's fine. It's a very much an adult learning environment. Yeah, like a university degree with some physical aspects in there too. But It was well run. Yeah, it was good. It definitely felt like once you graduated, you knew enough to sit on the back of a truck. Yeah.
Okay, so you felt maybe a bit more competence to start day one from that course than some others?
Yeah, I'd say like police academy into police life, you don't know really what you're walking into, but you have an idea of what you're going into after a fire recruit course. Obviously, you have no idea what station life's like, because that's it's almost like two different jobs: station life and then operationally at a fire scene. Two different things.
Well, let's not get too carried away with how hard table tennis is, mate. I've been to a station. I've seen what they're like.
Yeah, well, that's debriefing downtime.
During daylight hours, they play table tennis.
But like when you finished the recruit school, right? Did you think at your first job were you like, I need to put out a fire for validation, or because I've been to the fire facility and it's impressive. Like we went there. There was thermal imaging. We couldn't see anything. They filled the place with smoke. We're like running through going, what is going on? Like it was intense. Whereas at VicPol, they were like, I'd like to think that if I was nice to you, you'd do the right thing. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I will actually. You're right. That was great. And there's like, at worst, it's 20%.
I guess it's different because VicPol equipment that you're using is, you're being trained to use it against people. So you're not really tested. You're not really using it. You're just training with it. But with firefighting, you're using your BA, you're using your entry equipment at the college, so you know how it works in real time. The only difference is at the fire college, it's the gas props, the fire. It's not real fire. Does that make sense? So, yeah, when you come out, you haven't been to a real fire. That's the only real difference. But you still have that feeling of same thing. You
say it's not real fire. If you walked into it, would you burn?
Yes. But
it's a pretty real fire to
me.
But
it's turned on and off with a switch.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing as what I said before. You go to your crew don't know what your history is or how well you've been trained or any of that sort of stuff on your fire station. So I guess you want to prove to them, that you are competent as well. Same sort of thing. Like, yeah, you want to get those jobs under your belt just so they know you're competent.
So I want to ask you as well, you've been through a lot of different training in different jurisdictions, and we've all been through the days of sort of yelling and discipline all the way through to adult learning environments. A lot of places have gone away from the yelling and stuff now, but what do you think over all those spectrums of training get the best results and like embedded learning out of people?
It's definitely a middle ground, I think. If you have a sense that there is no path to failure, you're just going to coast and cruise, which, FRP probably is a little bit down that path. Once you're in it, people probably feel like they're safe. I guess they're not going to get kicked out, which is probably true.
But
really.
They've been screened quite extensively.
That's the flip side to it. So I do think there probably needs to be a bit of a fear.
Well, I mean, you did lose thousands literally just in the intake.
Right, but you still don't know that they're
competent.
Do
you know who Socrates is? No, well, get out.
Yeah, you still don't know that they're competent operators. Anyway, I think there's a middle ground. I don't think the screaming and all that thing, I don't think that's valid. I mean, there's probably a time and a place for a little bit of it. Depends what.
Yeah, other than some stimulation, inoculation, like we sort of know that you don't process the learning and you're just on edge all the time with those sort of courses.
It's very limited specific times. I think that might be valid.
And some of us at this table have been guilty of buying into those methods back in the day, but we've, learned some lessons over the years.
Yeah. But, and, we call it training scars or whatever you want to call it. But the adult learning environment, I guess, where you can just get coached through by people that know what they're talking about and then repeat it if you weren't successful in whatever test or scenario you're doing, I think is the best way. But what would I know?
I also think...
Well, I think you know a lot. That's why I asked you.
Well, I think it's also horses for courses with that, though. Like you've got...
Yeah, I think so.
In the police, like if you can't handle getting yelled at on a training course, then maybe don't go to a job where some bloke's literally going to abuse you and try and stab you with a knife. Like a fire's not going to tell you you're a bad individual,
that's
etc.
the difference, yeah.
And same as army, like when things are blowing up, things are doing whatever else it is, like you need to be able to scream at each other and do whatever else it is. And if you can't handle someone having a go at you, then potentially it's probably not the job you want to get to.
Yeah. I think it goes to a lot of the instructor credibility as well. If you respect and revere some of them, you could refer to them by their first name and still they could get 110% out of you. But if it was just relaxed and they didn't really, capture the students and the learning, then that method wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, I think what Burso said's right too, in the sense that you don't need to be yelled at while you're training, but you still need to have a bit of resilience to be yelled at, because operationally you might not be, might not be getting yelled at because you're doing something wrong, but whoever's in charge might be requiring something of you right now, and that requires them to tell you very sternly, go and do this right now, and you not get upset.
Yeah.
And I think, a few people can come unstuck with the adult learning environment with thinking that it's all roses until you get operationally and you get barked at or just directly told to do something. You need to understand that may happen too.
So there's another story I'll ask you to recount that kind of depicts a very distinct delineation between Victoria Police and FRV. I think you know what I'm going to ask you, but it's about the little filming incident.
Yeah.
And I think I need to give some context to this too, because there's always police often have a dislike to being filmed, and it's not for any reason, I think, other than they just don't want to be clipped and taken out of context, because they often are having confrontations with people.
Can I also point out that I don't know anybody that enjoys being filmed?
No, it's just a weird thing to have a bystander put, a phone in your face in the middle of something happening.
Anybody puts anything in your personal space, it's going to piss you off. It's like literally happened when we were kids, and it's like, I'm not touching you, and their hands in front of your face. Like, they're not touching you, but it's really riding you. It's somebody's phone. It's like, get it out of my face. But,
and to be clear, like, I think we all concur that like body-worn cameras on police is a great thing because there's a full record of everything that happens.
Yep.
But yeah, something slightly different happened to you when you were first at a fire station.
Yeah, when I first graduated, I went to a fire station, and the station officer actually was former Vic Pol as well. And we were going to a job. I can't remember what the job was exactly, but we get out of the truck. Bear in mind, I'm straight from police, just done recruits, so I still kind of have that policing mindset. And we get out of the truck, and then I see one of the public there recording us, filming us with their phone. And as most police do, we'll just go up and ask them politely not to do that. But he saw me walking up brusquely towards this person, and kudos to him for picking up what was happening, because he's just
He's probably seen it before.
Put his hand in front of my chest and said, "Mate, stop. They're filming us because they like us, not because they don't like us, like the police." So it was a bit of a moment of like, this is a different job. This is
what a privilege to be liked by the public.
Might be first responder emergency services, but let me tell you, it's different. Yeah, the way you are perceived.
It is funny.
Filming you because they like you.
Yeah.
Not to clip you and put you up on the interwebs.
No, because they're just happy to see a fire truck with license sirens and the boys and girls get out.
It's funny that of the three, the fireys are definitely the most liked. Like, you've got Ambulance Victoria, like they obviously turn up and they Narcan people on drugs.
I just don't understand why they're not liked apart from that. And who cares what junkies think? So,
well, junkies do.
Yeah.
And AV do because they get assaulted.
Yeah, well, that's fair, but I just don't understand how they can not be as liked.
It is bizarre to me. Like, they are literally turning up to try and save. Oh, geez, that was almost bad. I almost knocked my water all over the laptop. Like, they literally turn up and they're there to save your life. There's no other
every
reason why
time. Like, that is the only reason they're there.
I get that they ruin your high when you're off your head off on heroin and your heart rate's just about to stop, and they wake you up again, and that annoys you because you're like, that was a good ride. That was a good ride.
Yeah.
But they're literally doing that because you were dying.
Yeah, and they're junkies, so
yeah.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly hard job to go and just do medical intervention after medical intervention, and we'll try and touch on some of the stuff that FRV do as first responders, but I think, we haven't really touched on paramedics or Ambulance Victoria so far, but it's...
hopefully we'll touch some paramedics later.
Well, yeah, on that though, like Vic Pol, you kind of deal with paramedics a little bit, you do, but you don't actually get to see them operating.
And they don't really love you.
No.
You're a bit of a necessary security guard.
It can go 50-50, can't it? Like, because I've been to it once before where they've turned up and they've been so happy that you're there. And like, because you might be going there and some kid's overdose and the parents like, what are you doing to my kid, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, well, we got to get them out because they're literally trying to save this kid's life, and the parents are hindering their ability to do it. Now they're all for it. But then you go to another one where you taser some bloke and they're trying to pull some barbs out of wherever it is that's stuck into them. And they're like, how dare you? Did you really need to do this? Like this, and you're like, well, it's just, they're so either side.
But I guess my point was, you don't actually get to see them operate, within their sphere so much. You get them to see talking to people and doing some basic stuff. But with FRV, you really get to see them get to work, and far out they're good. Particularly, not anything against your normal ambulance paramedics, but your Micah guys.
Oh, Micahs are amazing.
Holy smokes, those guys.
Some of the most skilled people I've ever seen.
So good. Yeah, every time it impresses me. Every time.
Passionate. Like, they love what they do.
Yeah. Bloody good at their jobs.
But we've had them before where like people have been stabbed and that sort of stuff. Look, we've had a few self-harm jobs and some other jobs where we've grabbed people out and the ambos have been there and they've been amazing. Yep. But a mic is always first on. And they said, like, we get overtaken by micers to jobs sometimes. I mean, you're driving a bread truck. There's not much we can do about it.
Yep.
But, but they'll get there and they'll use you to help do stuff. Like,
that's what they're very good at delegating and assigning tasks and stuff.
Yeah. And they'll use whatever. They're literally one up. They turn up a lot of the time before an ambulance. You can hear the sirens, but if someone's bleeding out, they're bleeding out. And then old mate will be like, what have you got? And you're like, I've got a quick clot, I've got a tourniquet, I've got whatever. And they're like, cool, jam that on, whatever. And they'll literally assess your competence in the 3 minutes that old mate takes to bleed out. Yep. And he'll be like, oh, he can do this. And now all of a sudden you've got a new job where you do an open heart surgery basically to try and save this bloke's life because micers will do whatever it is they need to do.
Well, at FRV, we're going to go this, but we do emergency medical response, or EMR, which is we turn out to non-conscious, non-breathing patients with Ambulance Victoria. And that same category, I think it's called a category 0 or something, patient, mica get responded as well. So they will always turn up to cardiac arrest generally. Non-conscious, non-breathing generally means cardiac arrest. So they'll always turn up there. So we're dealing with them a lot. And they're phenomenal. They're so good.
You know who I really enjoy is micers on bikes. Because those dudes are absolutely crazy.
Committed.
Yeah, because they'll beat the other guy in a mica. It's just...
I think just the knowledge as well. I mean, police can always go back and look at a law book. I don't know about fireys, but you've got a lot of people there, I guess, that have different experience. But yeah, turning up to some of these injuries just two up where you might even just have a sort of recently graduated paramedic with you, it would be very intense.
Yeah, they do. You might not even know, but we as fireys have access on our radio channel to Ambulance Victoria clinicians as well. So even if before ambulance get there, something might have happened, there might be drugs or something, and we need to find out what it does. Not that we can do much about it, but if we have any questions, we just tap into that radio channel. There's an AV clinician there. They have the same sort of thing, obviously, and with hospitals. So they can bounce off resources if they need to, which is pretty handy.
So you called it EMR. So let's dive into that a little bit. So most people probably wouldn't know, you join the firefighters to fight fires essentially, but a big component of it is attending these injuries. So what's that like and how do you process that side of things? It's
interesting you say that not many people know that, and it's true. So many people I've spoken to have no idea that we do it, but it's been part of the firefighters, SOPs, I guess, or what they turn out for over 20 years. Nobody, or not nobody, but a lot of people don't know about. So, yeah, like I said, non-conscious, non-breathing will get responded, and we've got kit. I think they call it advanced first aid or advanced life support, where we've got oxygen therapy, defibrillation pads for kids and adults. We have like OPs, so they for airway obstructions, so to stop tongues, people not swallowing tongues, but
and an OP
obstructions.
is
Oropharyngeal, I think it stands for. And then obviously we're pretty well trained in CPR. We're like the muscle when we get there for the AV can do all the
broken rib champions
medical intervention stuff where they're accessing IVs and all that, and they do a lot of the breathing or the what's the word I'm looking for?
Compressions.
The airbag.
So we do a lot of the compressions.
Respiration.
Yeah, they do a lot of the airway intervention stuff because that's a little more complex or a little more
whereas the compressions are more like just push-ups, which is what you blokes are doing most days.
Head stuff. Yeah.
So do you roll with the bar black sheep or what's your method?
No, well, on the AV, their kit bag, which is their defib, they actually have like a metronome ticker.
Okay.
So you can actually go, it tells you if you're going too deep, if you're going too soft, too shallow, too quick, that sort of stuff. So you can go off that. But once you've done it as many times as most fireys have, then you don't need anything.
Feel the rhythm.
Yeah.
Then it just sends you to that Bee Gees Staying Alive song.
Yeah, that's the Office. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Even that, I think I've only done partial compressions once, but that's an immensely traumatic experience, like compressing a human being's chest. I imagine you've done that quite a lot now. Like, how do you process that?
In Jiu Jitsu or?
Well, yeah. Knee riding's probably not too dissimilar from
it's actually
compressions.
A good point you raise. I think in Vic Polo I only did compressions once, and that was just with a basic level 2 first aid, knowledge, I guess. Heaps and heaps of times. through FRV now. I worked at a station where it had a lot of ODs, a few suicides, and huge elderly population. So you're going to get a lot of those AMR jobs. I worked at that station for 2 years, so we got smashed. But you're 100% right. It's a strange feeling, particularly if you're the first person on the chest, is what we say. When you're first person that's doing the CPR, you will break ribs and probably their sternum. Again, depending on their age, if they're elderly, without a doubt. And then, I don't want to get too graphic into it, but it's a strange feeling underhand, knowing and feeling that pop and that break. But it's inevitable. If you're doing CPR correctly, that's the way it goes. I remember saying to my partner after a little while at this station, I don't think I want to do EMRs for a little bit, because we were getting them not necessarily every shift, but every 4 at least, within 4 days on, 4 days off, at least getting a couple in that. And I'd be like, I just don't want to feel that feeling of having somebody's ribs breaking under my hands. But that's the job. Some people don't do it ever. I went to another station after that for 18 months and didn't get one, just because of where it was. It was more of an industrial area and you didn't get that. So it just depends, what you get a lot of, your Richmond stations and Paran and that, they get a lot because of where they are. It just depends.
And we'll get into station life maybe in a minute, but how good, is the debrief and working through those sort of things afterwards as a team?
FRV is a little bit different, I guess, than say VicPol. You're not going from job to job, say on the general duties van. CERT's a little bit different, I guess, because you go to job and then you go back to station. But FRV is like that. So you'll go to your job, whatever it is. If it's a traumatic job, the boss, the SO, the SSO, the commander might say, just go back to your station, decompress for half an hour, whatever you need, and then come back online.
SO being again. Station officer,
SSO, senior station officer, or then commander. So it's just their rank. Yeah, and it's much more, I guess it's pretty open about debriefing with the crew. Nobody's weird about, if you feel strange about it, that's cool, talk about it, that's not a problem. Everybody's, after the job, everybody's asking how you went. And then if it is a job with the AMBOs, as in an EMR, at the end of the shift they will call every time. It's just part of their mandate, and just to check in to see if there was any training, learning outcomes, how the staff were going, all that sort of stuff. So and then there's all the usual stuff like, if you want chaplaincy service, peer support, all that sort of stuff. It's all available, psych services. If you want, you have to access it yourself, obviously. It's all free. But there's definitely things in place if you need to manage.
It sounds like the culture's pretty good, like a lot of stigmas have been removed in FRV and that side of things.
I haven't, in the time I've been in there, I haven't come across anyone that's had some sort of issue with anybody talking about mental health, or if you have an issue with a job, or it's pretty good.
Wow, it's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
So, we sort of jumped from the academy into doing the EMR sort of work. What's station life like? How did you feel finishing the college, with competency and getting into station rhythm?
Good. I was lucky enough. The first station I went to was really good. Great crew, mix of sort of older guys that are really experienced and some younger guys that were still keen to get amongst it. So, yeah, I've been really lucky at all the stations I've been at. I've had really good crews, really good bosses. Station life's probably a bit more like CERT, in the sense that you don't, like I said, you don't go from job to job. Once you do a job, you go back to station. You're obviously not actively patrolling for fires, so you're just at station waiting for the tones to go off, and then you respond. Station life's what you make of it, really. Like, there's training, it's involved. You do all your checks at the start of the shift. Then you check all your trucks, all the equipment within your trucks. Check your BAs and breathing apparatus, make sure everything's working and functioning. Then you wait for the tones to go off. Can be an interesting thing in the middle of the night. Like, I know everybody has a joke about sleeping as a firey on night shift, but, I try and steer away from, not steer away from, I have a laugh about it as well, but when everybody talks about, it's a cruisy life being a firey, it's you get to sleep on night shift.
The reason that especially police members like to give you shit is that we're just purely jealous. Like, you've got your lifestyle and all your culture pretty well sorted out, which is why so many jump across. So
even a lot of the public,
it's coming from a place of jealousy.
Even a lot of the public will have, you get to sleep on night shifts sort of stuff, which, yes, it's true. But like I said, I don't know if everybody really wants to turn out and be doing CPR all the time. Yeah. Car accidents and that sort of stuff where you can see some nasty stuff. And
the main difference I had with it was, police are doing an 8-hour shift and you get your rest days off afterwards, whereas fires, you're doing a 14-hour shift.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 14 hours at night time and there's literally no point in you patrolling to make sure nothing's on fire, I don't actually have an issue with you sleeping. I would rather you turn up after you've had 6 hours sleep and then rock up at 3 and be fighting a fire until, because it's not like you just knock off as soon as it's...
No, that's the fatigue management side of it too. So you want to be turning up ready to go. So that's a lot of that. But the fact that you are asleep and then the tones go off, so you get these bright LEDs come on, you have a red light flashing in your face, and there's actually like a voiceover telling you what the job is. What are the studies saying that you can? It's take some years off your life doing shift work. It's definitely that, being woken up 3, 4, 5, depends where you're at. In the city, you might be 8, 10 times a night to turn out in the truck, and you're turning out in 90 seconds or less.
Well,
is the goal.
I mean, the other thing is in the city, it's just floodwater most of the time. It's just alarm after alarm after alarm.
Well, yeah.
Upside, you don't have that many cats up a tree in the city.
So whilst we
could
could
trees are good jobs.
make the assumptions that you're sleeping all the way through every night, in reality there's a lot of nights of broken sleep, and then you might have other duties and family responsibilities during the day, so you're not necessarily compensating for that all the time.
Yeah, and it's not a sleep like you are at home either. You're asleep, but you're at work. Like that, it's a light sleep because you're waiting for those tones to go off so you can jump up.
And some people are playing table tennis all hours of the day. That's not quiet.
How many cats have you rescued?
One.
Is it a real thing?
Yeah. They get stuck in walls and roofs and stuff, and people will call, and you come out. Obviously, you don't come out.
Isn't it like a council animal rescue?
You don't come out lights and sirens, and you don't. You're obviously still available for emergencies. But yeah, that's a real thing, man. Yeah.
And the public love you.
Hey, get this one. I've rescued a bird out of a tree, or been there. I wasn't the one that rescued it.
Did you pipe up and say, "Hey, bird, you can fly"?
Yeah, well,
isn't the bird supposed to be in a tree?
It's confusing.
Well,
it's confusing times.
It was a pet parrot.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't supposed to be in the tree. So these things happen.
Did you feel like an imposter going to that? Like, had you trained for that?
Well, I felt like an imposter because we shouldn't have been there. No. Yeah, that's what we do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Interesting.
Sorry. When you guys go to a fire, right, if you, like, say you start at, I don't know what time your shift starts.
I thought you said you started. Like we started the fire.
Yeah, you started it. Well, I mean, I don't want to get into pretty much every story behind every fiery story on the backdraft, et cetera, et cetera. But, like what time does your shift start?
Night shift, 6 p.m.
6. So if you have a fire at like 3 in the morning,
yep.
Is there a changeover? Like if the new guys come on, do they come out and take over from you, or are you doing it and then they're taking over and respond to other fires? Or are you like with police where you're there until the end?
It depends. The truck is for the station, so the truck will be at the job. So the fires that come on the next shift won't have a truck to respond if they wanted to. So if it's going to be a really protracted job, then yeah, they'll either get driven out by like a district car, and then we'll just change over crews. Truck stays there obviously with them, then the guys that are at the fire will come back in the car and knock off. But if it's going to be an hour or two, they'll probably just keep the crews there.
So is there much overtime? Can you guys hear this bird that's trying to fight its way in through this window? Fedora's going to be like, I'm sick of hearing birds in the background of this stuff.
It's just loving the podcast.
Yeah. Overtime, there's it depends where you are again. It depends which station you're at. There's at fires, there's going to be overtime because they're not going to stop the job just so you can go home.
But it's not going to be like 12 hours like
no.
we do with crazy sieges in the middle of nowhere or whatever.
No, definitely not that, yeah.
And there's always someone to replace you then if needed because another shift's come on.
Yeah, as soon as the shift comes on, they'll start trying to organise it, but it might be a couple of hours by the time you get your overtime. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we move on to the final?
I feel like it. We're literally just about to tick over an hour.
Okay.
And that bird's cracking it, so I'm going to have to turn to leave after this podcast.
So there's something coming that we referenced at the start of episode 1 that you are aware of.
And that's enough for the episode. Thank you.
And for some logistical reasons, you do actually know what this is going to be, but we'll try and let you act surprised. But obviously a big premise of Imposter Podcast is throwing challenges out to each other. And you were under the false assumption that the only challenges were for us. But in fact, we do have one for you. So the challenge that we have set for you is to follow in the footsteps of one of our other friends, and we are going to require you to attempt to get into the Firefighters calendar. Now, we have set a rule that actually what you have to do is just go through the first step to whether it's application of a selfie or a written application. And so we can't really...
You just got to attempt. Like, they may not want him.
Yeah.
They won't want me.
Well, you can't force yourself onto a calendar. There's some elite rigs on there.
Yeah. What are you saying?
Exactly what you think I'm saying.
Thanks, buddy.
Now, for timings, we have made you aware of this previously. So I'd actually like to get your reaction after a couple of weeks. How has this challenge sat with you? And have you actually made any inquiries so far?
Oh, he's obviously, look at him, he's in much better shape than when we saw him last time.
Yeah, I'm training. No, it has not sat with me well at all. It's not something I'm interested in.
Because it was such a well-nailed challenge?
It is not something I'm interested in. But
that's the whole purpose.
I did have the thought of putting in for the World Firefighter calendar because I definitely won't get in because there'll be so many good applicants.
That's look, I'm not opposed to that.
Well, you've just got to put in for the first round.
Yeah. As long as there's some
essentially,
sort of testing.
we just need to get a selfie with your shirt off out of this somehow. That's kind of the...
No, this is a bit weird. That's not what I thought the podcast was going to be about.
Well, look, we're trying to find our niche, and look, gay money's green money. I don't care. I'll take whatever we can get.
Gay for pay.
Yeah.
You know, you even have the person that can train you specifically to do this.
Yeah, well, he's done one before.
Yeah. So, do you know what you have to do yet?
No idea, to be honest.
Well, I have to write a poem about myself as well. So
that's easy.
No, but he has to do it on a live.
I was going to do it on ChatGPT and then I have to go live on Instagram.
Like slam poetry. Do slam poetry.
Oh, I don't mind slam poetry.
Yeah. You'd be good at that. You'd be spot on at that.
Yeah, you probably would know that.
I like this now. See, that's what I needed. I needed to actually be interested in it. Now I'm like, yes.
Yeah. You should have to do it at like an open mic comedy place. You know, where they do that.
That's
going to happen as well.
Yes, stuff's coming.
The other thing that you don't know is all our guests are going to be collected more and more for all these challenges. So you'll be doing stand-up or slam poetry with us at some stage. So.
What is happening?
Mate, eventually there's going to be like 30 blokes that are just going to like some theatre where we're all on there and we're like, dance.
We're going to be filling events with all of our own little community.
Oh, yes, all right.
So there's a fairly open timeline on this, as we've discussed, because the calendars are at the end of each year. Although I don't know, the first round of applications might not be too far away. But we'll check in with you again soon and we'll update our Imposter listeners as to Dan's progress on getting into the firefighters calendar.
Can't wait.
Why isn't there a police calendar? People just not hang that on their wall?
Because of our fitness test, mate. 5.1 of the beep test does not make a calendar I want to see.
If they were fitter, would you want to see it?
Mate, look, to be fair, have a look at the manicured beards you lads are running. Looking sensational.
Don't ask questions you don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's go shoot some bows.
Oh, yeah, true that. That's a segue that nobody else knows about. Yeah. We've literally got our bows here because we're going to
future discussion.
Yeah, paid $260 for a pretend
shoot
pig.
Some arrows.
I'm going to go shoot at. Yeah, are we going to get into our sponsor that we don't have yet?
Oh yeah, well we've been consuming some delicious 3 Zeros coffee today to get us through the podcast, and went down pretty well. Yeah,
big shout out to the boys that aren't sponsoring us yet.
3 Zeros,
and that's because we've got
we
multiple emergency services, former emergency services on today. So 3 Zeros coffee.
But you're going to say we're not sponsored yet because we're yet to release a podcast, even though we've recorded 15.
Well, this is another cry for help of sponsorship.
Yeah,
just a cry for help.
Well, that's our
Dan Caruana,
jam.
thank you for coming back for a second episode, mate. Very much enjoyed it.
Thanks, boys.
Hopefully this one doesn't get cancelled.
Don't know what you mean.